Hello, everyone. I'm Harvey Brownstone, and today's guest is a multi-talented actress who first came to our attention playing Amber in Clueless, first in the movie and then for 3 seasons on TV. She then played the role of Morgan Cavanaugh for 3 seasons on Sabrina The Teenage Witch. You've also seen her in A Night at the Roxbury, Beverly Hills 90210, Judging Amy, The Lake, In Gale We Trust, and many other TV shows and movies. Most recently, she's written a fascinating book entitled Wake Me When You Leave, Love and Encouragement via Dreams from the Other Side. The book chronicles her transformational journey of falling apart following the death of her father and putting herself back together through the realization that he is still with her, guiding, watching over, and protecting her. She is the wonderful Elisa Donovan. Elisa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a lovely introduction. Thanks.
Well, you deserve it. Elisa, in 2003, right after being told that Sabrina the Teenage Witch was canceled and having your boyfriend break up with you, and he sounds like a jerk, mind you, you found out that your father had cancer and he eventually passed away. Can you tell us how you began to connect to your father through a series of dreams, visitations, and odd occurrences?
Yeah, so, initially it was so arresting, the whole situation, so many things falling apart at the same time. And I felt very disconnected from everything. And I really went through this process of not feeling connected to him or to anyone. And at a certain moment, I was just so devastated and so kind of I just felt like I had no bearings, right? I had nothing to hold on to and I wasn't sleeping. And just the very first time, there was this night when I just could not sleep and I was up for hours and I was crying and tired. And when we don't have enough sleep anyway, it's not a good, it's not a recipe for a happy or functional life. But on this night in particular, I really could not sleep. And I actually called out to my dad to just help me. I said, "Can you help me, please? I can't do this. I don't know how to keep going." And in that moment, I felt this presence, and it may sound crazy and wild, but I felt a hand on my chest telling me to go to sleep. And I just got up and went to my bed and I laid down and I fell asleep what felt like instantly. And I had this visitation dream with him that was incredibly powerful. And it was clear to me in the dream, I go into in depth about it in the book, but that he was in this kind of half place and wanting to help me, but he also was trying to kind of understand where he was himself. And it was incredibly powerful. And that was the first time that I really connected with him in that way.
Were you always interested in dreams and the
Yes.
afterlife and psychics and spirituality?
Yes, 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 yes. Since the time I was a child, I was born on my grandmother's birthday on my mom's side, and she used to go to psychics all the time. And she would do, and it's funny, I had forgotten about that. And she would read her own tarot cards and which is very contrary to the rest of her life. I mean, she was a bit progressive, actually. She was a chemist, which something that women really were not at that time. So she was a bit of an innovator. So I think I kind of followed in her footsteps unknowingly in the beginning. And then in junior high, I think it was, I remember doing a science project on dreams. And I interviewed my whole family and I made them write down their dreams. And it's something I've been fascinated by for years. Yes.
Why did you call the book Wake Me When You Leave?
So I feel as though it has several meanings. First of all, this idea of I have woken up to my own existence and my own life when my father left. And it's also a reference to the dreams and waking up when out of the dreams themselves. But really it's this idea that when he left, I woke up, and that's something that everyone says often. Oh, wake me up before you leave, wake me when you leave so we can say goodbye. And I feel that it has all of these references that resonate.
Yeah, they really do. Elisa, we have something in common. Like you, I'm constantly being helped by my mom who passed away 5 years ago. But
Oh,
the difference in our situations is this. For the last 2 years of her life, my mom constantly told me that she would be there with me, guiding and protecting me after she died. That's
really?
almost it's almost all she talked about during the last 2 years before she died. But in your case,
Wow.
your dad never told you before he died that he would be there afterwards to take care of you. Were you
No.
surprised when he started making his presence known?
Very, very much so. My dad was an extremely traditional and conventional person, and he was raised Catholic and was Catholic almost his entire life. And so he was just very traditional. So this idea of even talking about the afterlife, or certainly even talking about your feelings, and talking about loss, or he lost his own father when he was a teenager, and he never spoke about it. He never talked about it. And so I think, so much of his life, one of the reasons that our relationship was the way it was is we really looked at the world. I think I challenged him in ways that sort of exhausted him. you know, Being an actress, he didn't understand. He was an executive at AT&T. He was going, can you just be a lawyer, or be a, like, what are you doing? He just could not understand my life. And so he, I was shocked that he, and that first experience felt so strange, because when you have these visitation dreams, they're markedly different than a regular dream. And I can only articulate it to say it feels as though you're more lucid than you are when you're awake, and it's an incredibly pure sort of a feeling. And when I awoke in this state, I was so desperate for him to help me. And then I realized, oh, he kind of wants to talk to me too. And it was very discombobulating and confusing. And I think what I've learned over this whole experience, and on all this time, is that we're just living in this physical body here on earth, but the spirit never dies. And I don't, no matter what your religious beliefs are, I know there are a lot of kind of hard lines that religions take on this idea, but I truly just feel that it's all kind of the same if you broke it all down, and our spirits don't die. And it was an incredibly comforting notion to know that he's there, and that anytime I'm looking out my window. He also had a great sense of humor. So anytime, if I was just going to say, I've been doing all of the bulk of these interviews from my desk and out at home, and there's a tree outside, this big beautiful tree, and there's always a hummingbird whenever I sit down to do these interviews, and I know it's my dad. And anytime I've mentioned it, it doesn't show up. So I know, and then as soon as we end this interview, the hummingbird's going to be out there flying around. And I can just imagine him laughing about it. He's got a sense of humor about it all.
Well, you described your father as someone who always took care of everything and everyone. So I guess it's not a surprise that even after leaving this world, he continued to take care of you.
Oh, that's such a lovely thought. I don't think I ever really put that together in that way, but yes, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Well, you wrote that when you feel your dad's presence, it's like having an invisible co-pilot beside you. I must
Mhm.
tell you that I feel exactly the same way about my mom. And I think,
Oh,
Elisa,
I love that.
you expressed it perfectly.
Oh, thank you so much. I really, I just love, one of the things I've loved so much about talking about this book is the way that other people have wanted to share their stories and their experiences. And it's just been incredibly fulfilling to me in that regard. And it's just kind of this proof that it's real, to me and to you, I'm sure, when we've had this experience, there's just simply no question about it, right? And some people will say, oh, well, how do you know it's this? Or I don't know if I believe that, or I can understand that, but all I can say is that when it happens to you, there's just simply no question. It's an understood, it's a given.
Now, I know this sounds strange, but in reading your book, I got the feeling that your relationship with your father got closer after he passed away, and that you felt more love and affection from him after his death than when he was alive. Am I right?
Yes, that is right. And that is something that if you had told me that was going to happen before, I would have said you were crazy. But it's this sense of when he passed over, there's this kind of universality to what he understood, and it's as though he could appreciate who I am more so, and vice versa, and I could as well. And we had to find, it's not that he thought I was, unsuccessful or a terrible person or something. It's just that he struggled with trying to understand my career path and that sort of thing. And so that left me often with the feeling of, I want him to understand me. I want him to understand me. And why doesn't he get this? And, kind of wanting that approval that I think most of us are always looking for from our parents. But it always felt like I always missed the mark. I just didn't quite do it enough for him to understand. And then after he passed away, that was a miraculous, revelatory thing to truly feel in my heart of hearts and in my soul that he actually gets me now, and he really appreciates it.
Well, I think after reading this book, all of us get you. Now, we've talked about the concept of deceased loved ones helping us from the other side. But now I want to ask you, do you believe there are human guardian angels walking among us in this life?
So I do. I don't know what the terminology is. I don't know if I'd call them, living guardian angels, but I absolutely feel as though there are moments in time, sometimes actual real relationships that we have with people that have been guided to us. And sometimes it's just a moment, or it's an in passing or something. I've had so many experiences like this, certainly since my dad passed away, where I say, oh, I was just saved from something, or this person just said exactly what I needed to hear, and I've never met them before. And, those sorts of things where things resonate on such a deep level. And I think it's incredibly optimistic, right? It's like it makes life just even just more rich and beautiful.
Oh, absolutely. I think it can even happen during an interview. I've been so
Yeah.
looking forward to meeting you because I felt when I read your book that you were sitting down next to me and we were having a drink and you were talking to me.
Oh, that elates me, because that's how I wanted it to feel. I feel as though one of the things that really prompted me to write the book was that I felt, when we go through these challenging things, grief in particular, it feels incredibly isolating, and we feel like no one has gone through this in the way that we have. No one understands. It's just isolating. And I realized that people also don't know what to say when you're grieving, and they feel like, oh, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to, bring it up, as if we're not thinking about it all the time. And I wanted to kind of allow people permission to talk about these things, and to acknowledge that our challenges in life are a part of life. It's part of of the fabric of what it is to be human. And so often we, especially in this culture, we like things to be faster, quicker, prettier, shinier, younger, all those things. And that's just not the full picture, And so I hope, my hope was that this would really stimulate these kinds of conversations and to help people feel more connected.
Well, now, Elisa, this is a very personal book where you express frank opinions, not only about your parents and your siblings, but also about the dynamic between you, which wasn't always positive. So I have to ask you, how has your family reacted to the book?
Well, my mom, I'll start with my mom. She loved it, loved it, loved it. She's
Oh,
not an
great.
avid reader. She said she's read it 3 times. She did say, well, I learned a few things. And she said, I don't know if they're true or not, but anyway, we could chat about them, and I'm thinking, well, I didn't make anything up. So I'm not sure if she means the relationship stories in there or if she means my interpretation of her, which I think that is probably more of what she means.
But that's your
And
truth.
but it's my truth. Yes, yes. And I adore her, which I think is clear, hopefully comes across in the book, how wonderful she is. And my brother and sister, they haven't said anything.
That's
Now,
not good.
my brother, I did do a version of this years ago as a one-woman show at the Geffen Theater as a benefit for the Big Brothers Big Sisters Foundation, which I was on the board of. And my brother did come to that, and my mom. So they both saw it and they both really loved it. My brother is he's not as outwardly expressive and emotional as I am. And I think anyone in my family would say I'm the only one that is that way. So I think they just become accustomed to me being the one that just needs to talk about it, externalize it. Let's get down to business. Let's talk about it. My brother would often say, why are you so dramatic? As if, and I'm
Because
thinking,
you're an actress.
Exactly.
Well, you wrote in your book that dreams are full of rich material and information to help us listen to our inner knowledge. So what if you're like me and you can't remember your dreams?
So I have a great trick. I also have worked extensively in my creative life with a teacher, mentor who incorporates dream work and Carl Jung's work with dreams into our creative work. And one of the tools that I've used to remember is as soon as I wake up, I write down whatever images I can recall. And now sometimes I will do it where I speak into the phone, any kind of app, a voice app or something, where I just say whatever I can remember. Because as soon as we open our eyes, as soon as we wake up, and it starts to slip away all the details. And it is really kind of a muscle that we can exercise where you can, if you get into the habit of doing that, it'll start to come. And then you'll find that just little pieces, if you even just remember pieces and write them down, then later when you look at it, it might come back to you.
Okay, I'll try it. Elisa, I was really interested in what you wrote about bullying. You said, I'm quoting you here, 14-year-old kids can be especially cruel to one another and are adept at exposing and exploiting one another's vulnerabilities. It was devastating for me at the time, and I almost left school because of it. But I wound up becoming grateful for that experience because it showed me who I am and what I value. How did being bullied show you who you are?
Because I realized I didn't want to be around people that were unkind, and that I started to look at, well, why am I friendly with these people? And then realizing we don't actually like the same things. We don't actually enjoy doing the same things. We don't have, and it steered me more towards my creativity. I've always been a very creative person, but that moment in time really just also taught me how our creativity can really help us through challenging times. And that kind of expression can be really healing and helpful. And once, although that was incredibly painful, as I said, on the other side of it, I went, wow, this is amazing. Why would I ever want to be around those kinds of people?
So
And
then you started looking for like-minded people.
yes, that's right. That's right. And those friends are the people that we would do art projects together. On the weekends, we would shoot movies down in the park and write our own things and make music videos. And, you know, there was one time that, oh, I loved this so much. We were able to do an in-school field trip with this group of us. And we created this art installation in the art room with all of this cellophane and video, and it was a multimedia kind of thing that it was incredible. And I thought, this is how I want my life to go, with these kinds of people.
Well, you know, it's absolutely karmic. You ended up using your high school experiences with bullying to base your character Amber in Clueless. I think that's
right.
amazing.
I know. Yeah, it's kind of, you know, I always am playing any character. I always try to obviously make them as deep and as authentic as I can, and then you draw on life and other things. And in the case of Amber, I just went, oh,
I can do this.
I'm gonna be the opposite side of the coin, right? I'm gonna be the people that were not so warm, that were a little more shallow.
You wrote that when your best friend Ruth's father got diagnosed with cancer, you didn't know what to say or how to help her until your father got cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And then you understood what to say and how to act. And then you wrote about how your friends didn't know how to comfort you either.
Mm-hmm.
So what advice do you have on how to care for the living who are dealing with the dying?
Yes, it's such a big question. And, you know, I don't think there's some specific recipe except for this, to acknowledge that you are aware they're going through this, and to bring it to the forefront, because the person who's grieving is feeling it all the time. So there isn't, you know, and it's almost a, you know, a dismissing of it if you pretend as though everything's fine and happy and try to cheer them up. You know, there's this, then it feels as though
you're diminishing their pain.
You're diminishing it. You're diminishing their pain, and it doesn't, you know, it doesn't legitimize what our experiences are. And so I think truly just checking in with people and acknowledging it, and saying, I don't have the perfect thing to say. I wish I did. You know,
but at least you're validating.
Yes, yes, yes. And being there and allowing people to, you know, because I also remember this feeling of, you feel guilty if you are enjoying yourself, but you're not really enjoying yourself, kind of all of the things that we internalize. And the reality is we can be grieving, and we can also be laughing about something. We can be hugging and loving someone, and also be very terribly sad and missing someone. You know, like, life is full of all of these things at the same time.
Well, and you wrote about being in relationships where you were very lonely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, in 2004, you starred in Eve's Christmas as Eve Simon, a successful woman whose life choices have left her unhappy and alone, but then a magical wish transports her back in time, and she gets a second chance to fix her life. That role really, I'm guessing that it really resonated with you.
Woo, it sure did. And it was the first role that I played after my dad passed away. So, I mean, talk about using things from your life. And the character was estranged from her family, and was second guessing all of the decisions she had made. And there is a scene with her father that I thought, I don't know if I can get through this scene. I don't know if I can do this, because it was still so very fresh to me with my own dad. And there were a lot of parallels. And again, that's one of these things where it feels like such a gift to be a creative person in these kinds of situations, because I get to put it into my work and my daily life. You know, there are a lot of things that are incredibly challenging about leading a creative life that I wouldn't wish upon anyone. But this aspect of it is really quite beautiful because it can really enhance the work you're doing.
Well, I know you didn't get the chance to go back in time, but you really did fix your life, didn't you?
You know, when you were introducing me, I had this feeling wash over me of, oh my gosh, I really did put my life back together.
You
And
sure did, baby.
I don't know that I think about that much, but
But you
sometimes I look
did.
back, yes. And in this process of talking about this book, I've had some moments where I feel like, ooh, like the wind knocked out of me, remembering that it was really tough. It was a very tough time. It was a lot of things to go through at once.
I do hope you know that by writing the book, it struck me that this was a very therapeutic thing for you.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Well,
Very
is
much
there
so.
any chance the book will be made into a movie?
Yes, there is. So it's in development right now. I wrote the screenplay and I am attached to direct it. I will not be acting in it. And I am
Wow.
over the moon. So we are still trying to secure the financing, and small films, independent films are labors of love. And so there are a lot of kind of ups and downs until you hit the home stretch. But I have a wonderful producer and a couple of phenomenal actors attached already. And so we're trying to get the financing over the line. So
Lisa,
we're
you got to
almost,
promise me you'll come back on the show to promote the movie.
oh my gosh, of course I will. Yes, 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 yes.
Now, you mentioned in the book that while filming the movie Clueless, you were severely anorexic and you were even hospitalized during the shoot. But you didn't go into any detail in the book about how you overcame anorexia. So I'm just wondering, will you ever write a book about that? Because I think you could help a lot of people.
I have thought very much about that. And the truth is, I was offered a very, very large deal to write a book about my anorexia when I was barely recovered. And I thankfully had very good advice at the time. My manager at the time said, this big publisher may be offering you lots of money to do this, but then that will be your whole life. And I said, I can't write a book about recovery. I'm barely putting one foot in front of the other here, you know?
Good for you for recognizing that.
So yes, and I'm very grateful to my manager at that time for not being greedy enough to say, let's just take the money and write the book. But now I feel I've been really starting to think about that might be a great next book for me to write, because I still very much help. I help girls that are struggling, and I speak with parents often, and I really try to help because it's vital that people see recovered people, because it's one of these things that you either die from it or you lead this half life most of the time. And I want people to know that you truly can recover. You really can.
Well, I wanted to say to you, right now, the celebrity face of anorexia is Karen Carpenter, and she died. And I think it's so important that someone like you, who has overcome so much, you are such a great communicator. You're an incredibly good writer because you have an intimate style of writing, as I mentioned. So I hope you do it. And besides, that'll give me another reason to invite you back.
Yes, I will absolutely come back. I most definitely am going to write another book. I'm trying to decide what exactly it should be about. And I have actually been going back and forth between writing a book more geared towards the eating disorder and that recovery, and something and kind of a continuation of this book of what happened right after the next phase. But maybe it'll be a combo.
Yeah, and I think you should incorporate, here I am giving you advice.
Please,
I would love you to incorporate the bullying aspect into the anorexia, because that was part of your recovery too. But I want to tell you, you want to know what I was most touched about in your book?
Yes, please.
I love what your father said to you when you told him you were going into recovery for anorexia. He said, and I'm quoting, "I love you. I don't know anything about this thing. Just tell me what you need, how I can help you, and I will. You're going to be okay." That was such a positive and loving message. I've got goosebumps now just reading it. You immortalized your father, Elisa. You immortalized him in this book. And that's such a tribute to him. I hope you know that.
Oh, that's going to make me cry. Thank you so much. He really, that is the kind of person that he was. And I think that encapsulates why I felt so rudderless when he passed away. You know, at first I was kind of surprised that I was so lost. And, you know, he gave me such a foundation of I always felt like I know I'm going to be okay. And he was an incredible person. And, you know, I'm so glad you brought that up. Thank you.
Well, I got the sense from reading your book that one of your big motivators in your career was to get your father's approval and for him to see you as a success professionally. Did he ever express to you that he was proud of your accomplishments in show business?
So, yes. I mean, he would give sort of like a pat on the back and say, I'm proud of you, you know, in this small way. And my mom is the one that would be very effusive and, you know, telling the UPS man, "Oh, did you, you know, my daughter is in, you know, I don't know what you're doing on Tuesday evenings, but her television show is on, you know." And then she would tell me, "You know, your dad is very proud of you." And she would say, "You know, he's always talking about you when they're out and about, you know, like playing golf and they're having dinner with friends. And, oh, you know, yeah, my daughter's really doing well." You know, but it wasn't his way to tell me that.
So do you think he would have approved of the book?
I hope so. I've had the signs that are saying he is super proud of me. And he probably, and again, his sense of humor, I think he's probably also going, what is this craziness she's talking about? This spirituality, these crazy dreams. You know, he's probably also laughing a bit about it.
Well, Elisa, I love the key message of your book, which for me was that even when someone we love dies, they never really leave us, and it's never too late to make peace. And I'm so grateful to you for writing the book and for taking the time to come on our show. Thank you so much, Elisa.
Oh my gosh, this has been an absolute pleasure from start to finish. You are just a treat and a half.
I feel like I made a new friend.
I know, I feel like that too. I love it.
Well, I'm a huge fan. I'm so proud of you. I can't wait for the next book. I can't wait for the movie of this book. And I just think great things are going to happen to you because your dad has his hands on you.
He does. He really does. He does. I'm very grateful. Thank you so much, Harvey. You're wonderful.
Thank you. Our guest has been actress and author Elisa Donovan. My name is Harvey Brownstone, and Elisa is my new best friend. Thank you to our producer, Steve Silver. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time.
Remember to subscribe to the Harvey Brownstone Interviews YouTube channel. And be sure to check out more great interviews with Harvey Brownstone on harveybrownstoneinterviews.com.